From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast.
Hi, David.
Hello from 30,000 feet.
Yes, our recording studio is a little strange. I'm sitting on row 20. Well, I'm more kneeling, facing row 21 where you are sitting.
I'm row 20. You were on row 31 a minute
So were
ago.
you, but a very large man was on seat B and C, so you've left me.
Credit to the cabin crew here, because they said, sir, as soon as we find that there's a room on the plane, we will move you to a seat where there is more room. And thank you to the very kind gentleman at the back of the plane, the cabin crew from Azerbaijan Airlines, who arranged for me to sit a bit further forward on the plane.
I'm having a jolly trip here. The crew here are lovely. Any problem that's happened, they've really dealt with it. Someone forgot to book our vegetarian meals, and I just gave my little face, and I got a vegetarian meal. How was your vegetarian meal, David?
Yeah, it was okay. It was fine. However, you have got one of those red noses. Now, we've only been out of Israeli airspace for about an hour, and I'm guessing you're a little bit tipsy.
I have to say, another plus of Azerbaijan Airlines is their generosity with the alcohol.
You know, you just call them Azerbaijan Airlines because you can't talk properly.
Azerbaijan Airlines and their
I hope it is.
Alcohol portions are to be recommended.
We are, in case you haven't already figured it out, headed from Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion, on our way to Baku, which is the capital of...
I don't know. Which country are we going to, David?
This is a trip to Azerbaijan that we have been trying to arrange for 3 years? 2 years?
3 years. Do you know which episode?
Oh, no. Please, no. What? Go
Episode 10.
In episode 10, we interviewed Florian.
Florian, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Azerbaijan Tourism.
And can you say his surname?
Sengschmidt.
Very good. We'll ask him tomorrow at lunch if that's accurate.
He said, come to Azerbaijan. And after 3 years, a bit of hepatitis, COVID, a war.
We have to say something amazing about Azerbaijan as an Israel-based podcast. There are many, many countries that have, for various reasons, but basically for financial reasons, I think, some for political reasons, have kind of turned their back on the Israeli tourist over the last 2-3 years. We've had COVID, we've had the war that's going on at the moment. Throughout everything, as we actually mentioned on a podcast about IMTM, the Israeli tourism exhibition a few weeks ago, Azerbaijan has been by Israel's side throughout everything. And it's something that we as podcasters and generally the people of Israel really appreciate.
And this is a particularly interesting week to go to Azerbaijan. When we went to Georgia about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, there was the threat of an attack from Iran, which we were, it's not going to happen. And then one Saturday night, around 300 missiles were aimed at Israel.
Right.
And we sat through that, and thankfully we're all still here. Last week, when we confirmed our flights to Azerbaijan, one or two particular people leaving Azerbaijan on a helicopter never made it home to Iran. So the timing of our trips is, as ever, rather wonderful.
So it's something we've not really talked about before, but as we've travelled around, I'd say if you drew a circle of about 1,000 miles around Israel, every time we seem to go to one of those places, there's a political crisis, either where we're headed or back at home in Israel. So clearly we're the jinx.
Please God, we should go to one of those countries that doesn't like Israel and jinx them.
We are headed to Azerbaijan for 3-4 days. In this episode, we're going to be bringing you the very best of the capital, Baku. And then in an upcoming episode, we'll head out into the countryside and bring you one of the most remarkable stories from the Jewish world in the 21st century.
And we get to hopefully shoot some guns and drink some wine.
In a place with a wonderful name. But that's in an upcoming episode.
And let's hope we do the guns before the wine, otherwise that could also be a bit of a disaster.
You've already done the wine. Anyway, it'll be out of your system soon enough.
I'm not saying which specific alcohol I had, but it wasn't wine.
Folks, before we get on with the podcast and go to our first ad, here's Mark with a quiz question.
Baku and Chicago have a nickname, and they're very, very similar. What links Baku and Chicago?
The answer at the end of the pod.
Discover the future with Inside Israeli Innovation. I'm Eve Young from the Jerusalem Post, bringing you exclusive insights from Israel's top innovators. Each week, we dive into the latest trends in tech, business, and beyond with interviews from the brightest minds in the industry. Whether it's cutting-edge startups or revolutionary tech breakthroughs, Inside Israeli Innovation is your front row seat to the startup nation. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and stay ahead of the curve. Inside Israeli Innovation, where innovation meets inspiration.
Mark, we've been in Baku, which is not the name that the locals use. Apparently it's Baku, I believe. But we've been in the capital of Azerbaijan for 90 minutes now? First impressions.
Well, my first impression is if we were in Tel Aviv for 90 minutes, we'd still be waiting for our luggage.
It was very, very smooth. We had the extra step that we needed a visa to come into the country. We did all of that before our arrival. The people at Azerbaijan Travel, of course, helped us on our way, but everything was very smooth. Those people who didn't already have visas, there were machines in the airport. You pay the relevant amount of money, and there was an area where people were doing that process. Once we got through to passport control, it was incredibly smooth, and our bags were out within 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
My impressions of Azerbaijan from going on the Azerbaijan Travel website and talking to Jamila, who runs the Azerbaijan Travel office in Tel Aviv, is that Azerbaijan is a mix of nature and a mix of very, very modern architecture. And you saw that in the airport, in Heydar Aliyev Airport, brand new terminal building, very large, beautiful architecture.
You kept saying triangles.
I did. There were a lot of triangles in the architecture. And I think even in the design, there was kind of a triangle in the logo. It had a bit of a Dubai feel in that when we came down the stairs to baggage reclaim, there was like a VIP area, a really nice area where you could sit and relax while other people got your baggage.
The whole place was very big. It was very airy. You feel like you're in the entrance, the gateway to a capital city.
As we landed, it looked quite rural. As we came into the city, I found it very surprising. There were all the big buildings that I expected, a lot of modern buildings, a lot of apartment buildings, quite classically styled. But as you came into the city centre, it became much, much more European.
I feel right now as though I'm in a Paris, a Budapest. That's the kind of feel that I got. As I was saying to our guide, who we'll introduce in a moment's time, my preconceived idea was a historic old area and then these ultra modern buildings, skyscrapers. But there is this huge area of 100-year-old buildings that are in a Russian style, I guess, a St. Petersburg style as well.
And to add to that, you have elements of Western Europe. It's May and it's raining. Not heavily, but we're luckily undercover at a beautiful restaurant.
But the joy, of course, of having rain is that you also have green. And one of the things that I noticed straight away, right in the heart of downtown Baku, is the parks, the greenery. And in fact, we're now sitting in a courtyard with several restaurants, and I'm looking straight out at what looks like a woodland. I mean, it's squares, it's fountains, but it's beautiful, deep greens. It feels, to be honest, this feels like Manchester in the UK, the greenery, that colour.
I think squares and fountains would be a good reason to call it Fountain Square.
Very, very good. So let's introduce the gentleman who is going to be accompanying us and guiding us through this country over the next 3 days or so. So tell us who you are.
Hi everyone, my name is Suleyman. I was born in Dubai, originally from Azerbaijan, and I grown up in Baku. I met with two guys from the Jerusalem Post. You are welcome to Azerbaijan. Our government greeting and country greeting with the rain.
They've definitely picked a good guide for us. He looks a bit like me. He's young, handsome, silver-haired. Tell us a little bit about Azerbaijan. How big is Azerbaijan? How many people are here? And tell us a little bit about the capital in terms of its demographics.
Azerbaijan is 86.6 thousand square kilometers. The population of Azerbaijan more than 10 million, but only in Baku we have 40% of population of Azerbaijan, 4 million people. But it written 2.5, but with the suburbs of Baku we have 4 million people in the capital of Azerbaijan.
this episode, we're focusing on Baku, and our next episode, we will focus on the places that you're going to take us that are outside of the city. So for now, we'll focus on Baku. Would you describe this as an old city, a new city? It feels to me as though there's a real mix here.
As you see, we have old city and the new city, and also some middle point. By the architecture we can see there is some pass between old and the new. The ancient part of Baku is nearby us. It is the old city. They found some archaeological things, foundation from the Bronze area, and after that they start to build in the 12th century. It's looking like a fortress, and also the Shirvanshah Palace inside, and some other palaces and mosques and other things.
We had this discussion a little bit when we were in Georgia in previous episodes, and Georgia is a neighbouring country of Azerbaijan. In terms of soccer, Azerbaijan is in Europe. In terms of the Eurovision Song Contest, Azerbaijan is in Europe. Do you feel this is a European country, or do you feel you're more in Asia, or is there something special about Azerbaijan and this region that's neither one nor the other?
If need to be honest, I've never been in Asia and also Europe, but I think after 2012 we start to be European country because of the Eurovision Song Contest, and after that we have many events in Europe, so that's why we can see many buildings that was built in that time, in that period.
Mark, we're about to tuck into meal number one. Suleyman has ordered, we have absolutely no idea what, because he was talking away in Azerbaijani. We will find out, but from my guess is we're going to be getting over the next few days a lot of local flavours.
I can see a kebab shop over there in the corner, so I think that's where yours is coming from.
Me, the vegetarian. We'll be back in a little while. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, David.
It's a lovely sleep, lovely breakfast, and a gorgeous day here in Baku.
Yes, I finally got out to the balcony to see the sunshine.
The view from the bedroom window is staggering across the Caspian Sea. Of course, you have to have one of those Ferris wheel round things in front, but just beautiful. We've walked through the middle of the city. Do you remember the name of the main street?
Nizami Street.
He's good. It's very much, as I think we were saying last night, you get a sort of European continental feel, the architecture and so on. It's all pedestrianised, green, fountains.
And it wouldn't be a Jerusalem Post travel podcast without us finding a synagogue somewhere in the centre of town.
Whenever I'm called into a rabbi's office, it always reminds me of school and being in trouble. And we got called up straight away to the office. We missed out the Bet Knesset, the synagogue we're going to have a look at. And it's a very high building, so about 4 stories up. So we've seen 2 or 3 shuls or Batei Midrash. We'll go and take a look at those in a few minutes. But we are with the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Azerbaijan, Rabbi Shneor Segal. Thank you very much indeed for calling us into your office. Are we in trouble?
In Azerbaijan, it's a way of showing respect to invite someone to your office because everyone walks into the shul. We were downstairs, you wanted to speak to me, and downstairs there's a lesson going on after Shacharit, so I didn't want to disturb them and didn't want to disturb you, so this is a quiet place that we can sit and speak, and hopefully when after we'll be done, we'll go down, they will be done, and we'll be able to see it, but you're not in trouble.
Your accent doesn't sound very Azerbaijani. Where did you start? Where did you travel to? And how did you end up in Baku?
I am an Israeli. I was born to a Chabad family. My parents, they are shluchim of the Rebbe to the city of Migdal HaEmek, and they still live there. I was growing up there, going to yeshivas. I spent 2 years in Manchester.
Yay!
That's where I started to learn English, because I was going to Cheder.
You didn't pick up a Manchester accent, though.
Most of the students, most of the Bachurim in the yeshiva, everyone was from America mostly. And growing up in the Chabad system, in the yeshiva in Israel, then in Manchester, then in the US, and then shlichut in a few yeshivot, ending up my last one in France, in Brenois, and then getting married and going on a shlichut. And somehow I end up here in Baku, in Azerbaijan.
Talk a little bit about the community. Let's start with the history.
Jews live in Azerbaijan for a very long time. Mountain Jews, some people say close to 2,000 years. But Ashkenazi Jews mostly are, as far as I understand, in what I heard here, about 185 years ago when they found the oil here in Azerbaijan. A lot of Ashkenazi Jews moved here, and again during the Second World War also. Probably a place that people moved in. A vibrant community. Many Jews, but it's a post-Soviet community, trying to get it more active. And thank God, if we can think about today, we have a Jewish school with almost 200 children with kindergarten, day school, and elementary and high school. You walked in, we just ended up Shacharit this morning. A lot of activities here. Young people, kids, Sunday school, youth club, student club, women's club, shiurei Torah, almost every day here. And thank God, very, very vibrant community in a tolerant country. No one is disturbing. It's not a concern to walk around on the street with kippah, and especially with this outfit of a Chabadnik on the streets here. The only big problem here is the wind. So with the kippah and the hat, so it can be sometimes a problem. But it's a nice community in a very good atmosphere with the local community, with local Azerbaijani people. And thank God, trying to do our best to get more and more people involved in the life of the community. And thank God, it's so far successful going on.
If I'm a Jewish tourist coming to Baku, what is there for me to see?
So first of all, you have the synagogues. In Baku, I would say Jewish to see, it's probably the cemeteries. You have in Kuba and in Oguz, you can find old synagogues in Oguz and in Kuba. There used to be big Jewish communities there in Kuba. There's still a community in Oguz, it's much smaller. I wouldn't say there's much of Jewish sightseeing. Kuba is very, very, very interesting. And I understand that you will be there and see it, but there's a Jewish museum there, and there is some very ancient Jewish community, like a shtetl, like a village. Only Jews used to live in that part of the city of Kuba. There's a bridge, and on the other side of the bridge, only Jews used to live there. Interesting. But in Baku, a regular city with a Jewish community, not much Jewish sightseeing, I would say.
And for those people who are Shabbat observant, kosher observant, is this a place that you would say, come and see? And how do they deal with Shabbat here and kashrut?
We have a lot of tourists that come here. We have a kosher catering that cater kosher meals. People either order it to their hotels, or groups coming to the Jewish school or to the synagogue to have dinners or breakfast here. Shabbat, we have Shabbat meals that people are signing up in advance. And we have Friday nights and Shabbat. It all depends on the amount. We didn't have travelers from Israel. From the 7th of October till 19th of March, the direct flights from Azerbaijan were not functioning, but now it's back, and slowly we had today a big group of 70 people walking in this morning to shul. They happened to be in a next-door hotel, just walked this morning before Shacharit, they saw the synagogue. So we have tourists coming in, and those who are looking for kosher, we have this ordering online, kosher meals for delivery or joining for Shabbat meals, so it's functioning, yes, it's working.
How does the community deal with getting kosher food? Is there shechita here? Are there kosher stores?
As I told you, we have a Jewish school, and one of the graduated students of the Jewish school went to a yeshiva in Moscow, ended up in yeshiva in Israel, got married, got smicha for shechita, for milah also, and he came back here as one of the rabbis here in the community. Him and his wife both were born here, and he is our shochet. So we have our own shechita here. We have another rabbi who does the chicken. So we have full shechita here. We have all the services here. Fish, we have the Caspian Sea here. And so there's a lot of kosher fish here in town. Fruits and vegetables. Azerbaijan is Eretz Zavat, Perot and vegetables. So there's also enjoying it. And as you see, it doesn't look like we are starving here. So yes, we have a kosher. But there's not a lot of kosher production of local products. It means it will be hard to find, let's say, milk products, Halav Israel. Basically, you will not be able to find, or nash and these kind of things. So bring it with you when you come. But chicken, meat, fish, fruits and vegetables, we have it all here, and thank God we are supplying it. People come to the synagogue, whoever wants to, members of the community who want to keep kosher home are able to buy kosher meat and chicken here in the shul.
What's the website if people want to be in touch?
Just going to probably to kosher mills in Baku.
If people want to come here for services, are there daily services? What time are the services on Shabbat?
We have daily services, Shacharit every morning, 9:15, and Shabbat, Chabad time, 10 o'clock, starting Shacharit here, 11 o'clock we Torah reading, and 12 o'clock we have our Kiddush with a very nice chant, Azerbaijani, Ashkenazi chant. We make it with lamb sometimes, so you can sometimes it can be an interesting Shabbat Kiddush. Not every Shabbat with lamb, but you should try it. It's very tasty, and it brings the chant to a whole different level.
The wonderful thing I love about Chabad rabbis is that they tell you the service times in about 5 seconds, and then to give about 2 minutes to the Kiddush afterwards.
Everyone knows what the service in every shul is, and everyone is looking for a shul and knows that Shacharit start and everything, but the Kiddush is usually different in every community. The davening is the same. We are davening the same in every place. You cannot change the davening to make it an Azeri Jewish style davening, right? But you can make the chant Azeri style, right?
And the other half of the Kiddush, in Azerbaijan, is it whiskey or is it vodka?
It depends. Sometimes it's vodka, sometimes it's whiskey, sometimes it's wine. But it's a very nice Kiddush that we have every Shabbat with the Farbrengen together. We are sitting together. The community is sitting together. There's about 40 to 50 people every Shabbat. And it's something interesting. Before you come, if you'll do some Russian classes, you'll enjoy it much more because it's mostly going in Russian. It's because most of the people are Russian speaking.
Rabbi Shneor, the chief rabbi of the Ashkenazi community in Azerbaijan, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com. David, this is one of the things I really love about our travels, is sitting in synagogues in Bet Knesset around the world and seeing Jewish life alive.
You probably can't quite hear, but there are voices disappearing. We've come into the main sanctuary, the main building of the shul, and a Shneor, a Jewish lesson, just finished. What I think is amazing, and we heard this from Rav Shneor Segal a few moments ago, is that in a small community where people don't necessarily know that much about their Judaism historically, where it's been a struggle to keep the community going, there's daily services and daily lectures.
Here, more than most of the countries we go to, it's really interesting to see this life and Judaism thriving, alive, because we're in a Muslim country. It's a secular Muslim country. But if you talk to the average Jew in America or Israel and say, what's life going to be like in a Muslim country as a Jew? They think it's oppression, they think there's no freedom, you can't do anything. And we have the privilege of sitting in the synagogue in the middle of Baku, talking with the rabbi, and now just sitting in the synagogue disturbing everybody while they're learning and recording.
The synagogue isn't hidden away on some side street. We are right off the main street in the heart of the city. And as Rabbi Segal told us, I think not when we were recording, not only are Jews tolerated here, but Judaism is actually encouraged here.
There was quite a lot of security here, more than we saw in Georgia, but I think a lot of this is post-October the 7th, and I think one of the things we've found over the last 2-3 years when we've travelled, when we've been in Western Europe, in freer countries, almost anti-Semitism is freer. So the synagogues are more locked up, more closed, there's more security. And as you move further east to Eastern Europe, where in the past religion wasn't welcomed, and certainly even in a Muslim country like this, it's actually much freer and much safer. In Georgia, the streets were open. In Poland, the Jewish community center was open. Here, the security upgrades are a more recent thing, and people feel much freer to be Jewish.
So we've been in a beautiful classroom up on the top floor, very bright, with lots of photographs of the kids doing various things. You might find some of those on our social media at MarkDavidPod. And Mark, since you're the good description guy, talk about the main sanctuary, the shul that we're in at the moment.
It's a light colour, it's cream coloured. There's lots of wooden chairs here. It's more practical, I think, than some of the synagogues, but there's a lot of beautiful design. There's I think that may be the small mechitza downstairs where the rabbi sits, the shtenders, they all have this carved wood with a Magen David on it. The Aron Kodesh is also a dark wood. The writing of the Ten Commandments form the walls on either side with a curtain in the middle with a blue velvet curtain. It looks
to all intents and purposes, like a modern European Ashkenazi synagogue.
So just a word about the parochet, the curtain that covers the ark where the Torah is. In the center is a Star of David, a Magen David, and within it, is it all 12? I can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That is actually quite brilliant. What they've done is they've divided it into 12 smaller triangles, and each one shows within it the sign of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. I've never seen anything like that before. It's very clever.
I was actually looking at the tribe of Levi, which has the 12 stones of the breastplate of the high priest, and thinking, oh, that's a summary, because there's 13 triangles, but there's actually 12 triangles. So now I know better. One of the interesting things when you walk around this synagogue is there are lots of pictures and posters about the groups that take place outside of Shabbat, the youth groups, the learning groups, and certainly the teenage groups and the young people's groups here. They have a lot of fun. There's lots of pictures of trips. You know, when I was young, maybe we went with B'nai Akiva once a year somewhere, and we had to pay a lot of money for camp. I think here there's funding to take children overseas to really fascinating places. They've been on cruises, they've been to Dubai, they've been to Thailand. This is a really nice community to be in, I think.
I'm going to leave you with a bonus quiz question. I want you, if you're listening to this, to draw out the Star of David and Magen David and tell us how many triangles there are.
We've trotted across town, gone through multiple underground passages, and made our way to another synagogue. But this one is very different. We are at the Mountain Dew synagogue in Baku, the Kafkazi synagogue. David, what are your first impressions?
This is very different to anything, if you're Ashkenazi, that you will be used to. First of all, something I have never done in a synagogue before.
Pray.
Apart from praying, is we were both asked, as was our guide Suleyman, to take off our shoes before coming into prayer. And then you walk in, and Mark, you'll describe the synagogue in a minute, but I'll just say that the floor is absolutely covered in gorgeous Azerbaijani carpets, one after another after another.
The Aron Kodesh, the Ark, there are two arks next to each other, surrounded by beautifully handcrafted wooden sculpture. Everything in this synagogue is handcrafted and wooden. The synagogue is probably wider than it is long. It has room maybe for 80, 90 people. There is a ladies' gallery upstairs, but it is very different. It's not like a mosque because you have the traditional seating that you would find in a synagogue, but with the carpets and the wood, it has a very different feel to most of the synagogues we've been to.
It's only less than 15 years old. It has a very traditional feel, but it was also very modern. There are stained glass windows. They are very bright, rainbow-coloured, almost harlequin in feel. Amongst them, above the ark, are the 12 sons. There are also other stained glass windows representing Jewish holidays, Jewish festivals, but also, very interesting, to the right, just to the side of the ladies' gallery, is a stained glass window, and in it, proudly, is the Azerbaijani flag. That's very unusual to see in a synagogue.
Not just the Azerbaijani flag, there are modern military aircraft in the picture, alluding to one of the more recent conflicts in the region. Behind us, though, is the complete opposite. There is a beautiful silk carpet full of Jewish imagery and stories, starting with Adam and Eve, going all the way, we think, possibly to the story of Purim and Esther maybe, or King Solomon. There are lots and lots of stories, and it looks as though it's been crafted by somebody not Jewish, but is a very kind donation to the synagogue.
What I would say is, as opposed to the regular Ashkenazi synagogue, which is very functional, if you're somebody with ADHD, this synagogue would be absolute paradise, because if the rabbi or the service is going on a little bit and you're looking for a break, you just look around you and you're not going to be bored. You're actually going to be inspired by all themes Jewish, and indeed some Azerbaijani nationalism. But this is phenomenal. At the back, another image in stained glass is images of the temple. It's a map of how the temple looks. These are images that we might be familiar with, but you tend not to see in a synagogue.
Certainly for me on Yom Kippur, when I'm trying to pass 2 hours, this would be the place to do it.
I'm surrounded by octopuses, mushrooms, stingrays, jellyfish, and I'm about to hit my balls into a snail.
Just the experience of watching 2 robot arms making your cocktail for you.
I've got this strapping thing on and a very small piece of metal that is going to hold my body on a rope.
And we were fighting as snow shifters.
Against Yetis.
So we're both in very nice floral dresses.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris.
Yummy.
Salads are good.
Oh yeah, sorry about that, David.
So here's an interesting question, because if you're in New York or in Jerusalem, it's very easy to find kosher meat. Out in places like this, it's a bit harder. As we heard a little bit earlier from the Rabbi, they ended up training somebody local to become a shochat, to become a slaughterer, and so on. And so kosher meat is locally procured, but presumably it's still harder to get hold of. So what's it like to try meat locally here? And what did you have?
Where were we, more importantly?
Oh, Rimon, kosher restaurant on 3 levels, upstairs, up a very steep spiral staircase.
Was transcendental level.
On first floor, up 1 level, there's a live stage. It was fairly dark, but we went up another floor to lots and lots of greenery. And presumably at one point it was the roof of the building, which is now a tent.
It reminded me of a restaurant I used to go to in London many years ago called Solly's, where they built on the roof and had this fabric tent. The black fabric here looked more like a bin liner, but was... No, it was really nicely laid out, very light, lots of floor-to-ceiling windows. Just a beautifully laid out restaurant.
All right, back to my original question. What's the meat like?
Oh, I thought you just said, what's it like?
No, the meat. We were talking about the meat. That's why I did that whole interesting thing about ritual slaughterers and stuff.
Oh, what was the meat like?
Yes.
Meaty. I had a very lovely stuffed bread, which you roll up and eat with your hands. That was gorgeous. We had a sort of, I think it was lamb, could have been beef stew. I didn't ask because I've not ordered a single thing here. I'm looked after very well. We had a very lovely meaty stew on rice, which was also beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was it in terms of meat. And then there were plenty of lovely salads. No cheese, thankfully.
Never mix your milchiks with your flesheks.
And more importantly, for those of you that care, it was mahadrin. Never mind kosher.
That means
mahadrin kosher.
Very, very kosher.
Super kosher.
And even more important than all of that, for us who care, was our host. And we should say a quick thank you to Florian as well. Now, you're going to say his surname because I'm never going to do it.
Florian. Mr. Florian. No, his surname is Sengschmidt, David.
Sengschmidt.
You've met him like 4 times.
I know.
We've interviewed him twice.
He's the guy who makes sure that everything tourism in this country works. It's fantastic to be with him. Azerbaijan.travel is the website to go to if you want to get more details. And there you go, a kosher place right in the heart of town here in Baku.
And they serve a very lovely mix of Israeli and traditional Azerbaijani food.
Azerbaijan Fact File. The main airport is Heydar Aliyev International in Baku, which acts as a major hub to Europe and Asia. There are smaller airports in Ganja, Lankaran and Nakhchivan. Azerbaijan Airlines flies to Baku from London, Paris and Tel Aviv and up to 60 destinations worldwide. Tickets can be booked at azal.az and through the app. Tel Aviv is also served by a direct Israel flight. Lufthansa, Air France and major Gulf airlines also fly into Baku. Getting from the airport to the city centre takes around 20 minutes by car or bus. There are shuttle buses on the route from the airport to downtown, as well as taxis available at the terminal exit. You can also use Bolt or Uber. Baku has an underground metro, public buses and taxis. For inter-regional travel, it's possible to rent a car or buy a ticket for inter-regional bus journeys. We stayed at the Sheraton in Tourist Hotel, which reopened a year ago after a 3-year refurbishment. Baku also has global hotel chains like Marriott, Hilton, Four Seasons, Fairmont, and soon-to-be-opened IHG and Ritz-Carlton. For those wishing to take a rest from the busy city life, large resorts and spas offering numerous health treatments await in picturesque surroundings. $1 will buy 1.7 Azerbaijani manat as of June 2024. The climate of Azerbaijan can be described as continental influenced, with warm summers and very cold, dry winters. Maximum temperatures vary between 7 Celsius (45 Fahrenheit) in January and 31 Celsius (88 Fahrenheit) in July and August. Azerbaijani cuisine is full of different types of vegetables and beans. Rice and flour-based products are widely used in national cuisine, and the majority of national dishes are made with lamb, beef or poultry. Rimon Restaurant at 74 Uzeyir Hajibayev Street in Baku offers kosher meat dishes. Shabbat meals and kosher hotel deliveries can be organised through Chabad at chabadbaku.com.
This is the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
I am Balash Maksud Beyli, who graduated special guide interpreting courses in Moscow in 1984, who is former diplomat working for United Nations, Japanese Embassy, Belgium Embassy, who is awarded the Peace Prize of United Nations, as well as our President Ilham Aliyev's Special Progress Order I received last year, working for tourism sector 40 years already.
Now, that all comes to us as a complete surprise, because when you introduced yourself when we weren't recording, you just said, I'm a tour guide.
I am a tour guide. Today is tour guide. Of course, I am on pension, already returned back to my initial work, to render the services for my guests.
We've been sitting with you for 20 minutes as you've bought some very interesting postcards of some of the key figures in Baku's history, especially some of the Jewish figures in Baku's history. If you had to pick 2 or 3 of those names that have had the greatest influence on Baku, who would they be?
2, 3 names is very few for Azerbaijan, because Jewish people made a great contribution, as I told you, in the development of history, literature, economy, music, sport of Azerbaijan. Of course, the great person is Mstislav Rostropovich, the great cello conductor, as well as his father, academician Leopold Rostropovich, who was an academician of our music academy. Leo Landau, who was born here, the founder of atomic energy, together receiving Nobel Prize with his teacher Niels Bohr during Soviet time, as well as very famous writer Leo Nissenbaum, who today remained for us very nice novel speaking about occupation of all Caucasus by Russian communist time after 1920, and there also a love history, Ali and Nino. We can speak about him also, as well as very famous people lived here, including very nice jewelers, doctors. Speaking about doctors, we can indicate the name of the famous Elizaro, very famous surgeon, as well as Guzman Solomon. He was academician of our Republican Hospital, surgeon, as well as and many famous. And the Guzman family was not only included he himself, Solomon Guzman, his 2 sons, 2 brothers Guzmans today are very famous persons in former Soviet Union, in Azerbaijan, as well as his later wife Barsuk Leonella. She was my teacher at the University of Foreign Languages. Very, very nice person. Even any of her students speaking about her could say only and only good words. The first lady professor, doctor, who used to write a very nice book about English language for English teachers. Even today, our students use Leonella Barsuk's English language, this book.
The history of this place is remarkable, folks. If you've got a map in front of you, it will help you through this podcast. Just give us a potted history of the various invaders who've come from the east, the west, the south, the north into your country?
4th century BC, Alexander the Great, with his army, arrived in Azerbaijan. He settled 45 kilometers far from Baku, calling the territory Mardechan. Roman Emperor Domitian, 1st century AD, his legion number 12 used to pass from here. After them, 7th century, exactly saying 642, the great Arabian army headed by Caliph Omar used to pass from here. After him, here appeared Russian pirates. 1722, Baku was bombed by artillery launch of Admiral Matyushkin. It is a period of Peter the Great. His goal also was to take Persia. After this, already many people you don't know about this one. Baku was captured by Russian Tsar army 1805, by Russian Communist army 1920, but before this one, Great British Army also used to be here. After this, Russian Army entered Baku, 1920, April 28th. Today we are happy that we are independent, we are democratic state, and today our national flag will be the longest, tallest national flag pole in all over the world, 192 meters, which is under construction on the shore of Caspian Sea.
We've almost completed a wonderful walking tour around Baku, and we've come to a point which I think is a great summary of Baku. We have some really, really old buildings over here. I'll sound ignorant and not say too much about it. Behind me is a very, very modern symbol of Baku. To my right is the Caspian Sea. Next to it is a communist building, and to my left is some Tsarist period, the buildings there. We've got the whole history of Baku almost in this one square.
It's not only about the architecture, it's about the things that are here as well. So you've got modern commerce, you've got the caravanserai, which were the places where people would stop along the Silk Road. You've got defensive towers, you have hammam, the Turkish baths, and all of this is mixed together within a very short distance within the walls of the city. And then just outside the walls of the old town, you also have architecture from the last couple of hundred years.
Behind us is probably the oldest building, which I believe is called the Maiden Tower. What's the history of the Maiden Tower?
The history of the Maiden Tower going back 8th century AD, when the first part of this Maiden Tower was Zoroastrian temple, when in this city used to live Zoroastrians believing the fire, praying in front of the fire. But at the end of 12th, beginning of 13th century, one rich person who lived here, understanding that today or tomorrow Chinggis Khan Mongolian very strong army will on the eve of Baku and will enter Baku, their main goal is to go to Persia. He decided to construct the other part of this defensive tower in order to allow the rich people, mainly the women part, to enter inside and to protect their property, their jewelries inside of this tower. At the end already, none of imperialistic forces couldn't take this defensive tower. The local population, 17th century, they called this tower Maiden Tower, never touched tower, clean tower, poor ladies tower.
You mentioned the word fire. There are flames to be seen on the emblems of the city, and now the modern symbol is the flame towers, which Mark referenced without saying their name, which are up on a hill, 3 buildings shaped like a flame, business centre, hotel, lit up stunningly at night. What is this connection to fire, to flames?
Our modern flame tower, which was constructed by American architect Barry Hughes, 2012. It symbolizes the symbol of Baku, emblem of Baku. Not only Soviet time, even Russian Tsar time emblem of Baku was 3 tongue of fires. We call tongue of fire buta in our language. But Russian Tsar time on the top was crown of Russian Tsar. Today without crown and under the waves of Caspian Sea we can see. And it symbolizes a symbol of Baku, emblem of Baku.
To talk the latest news in Israel, the Jewish world, and everything in between.
This is the J-Post Podcast. I'm Tamar Uriel-Beery, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Tzvika Klein, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Sarah Ben-Nun, Night Editor at the Jerusalem Post. Join us as we bring some of the most impactful voices to bring you into what it means to be Jewish, to be Israeli today.
Every week, we bring you with us into the newsroom in every sense.
Stop being so dramatic. This is just our coffee break.
You can find us every Thursday on jpost.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there.
Yalla, bye.
Wow, David.
Well, Mark.
This is stunning. And thank you for dragging me away from that exhibition over there. Just completely hypnotic.
We're in a phenomenal building. As we walked in, and Mark does not heap praise easily, he said this is perhaps one of the most amazing buildings I've ever walked in. Why were you saying that? Clearly not just to impress me.
Just the architecture. It's very white, full of glass, very light, and then contrasted against it, you have spots of colour. It feels very spacious. There are curves and waves everywhere. It's just a wonderfully designed building.
Our guide, Suleyman, this is one of his favourite places in the city, I think maybe even in the whole country. Where are we?
Now we are in the Haydar Aliyev Center. A building was given by our current president Ilham Aliyev to his father, our former president, Haydar Aliyev, and also by name after Haydar Aliyev, this building.
What is this building? Is it a concert venue? Is it a museum? What's it meant to be?
Inside of this museum we have several museums. If you want to see something and if you want to learn something about Azerbaijan, there are everything inside. One side, history of Azerbaijan, in the other side, archaeological foundations, jewelry, tolerance, everything. The map of Azerbaijan and also historical monuments of Azerbaijan we can see in the wall.
We're just in the lobby. We've not really walked around yet. I'm guessing, given the architecture here, that this is not your traditional type of museum.
No, the architecture is very new for us, and because Zaha Hadid, she didn't use any straight line in this building. Everywhere you can see only white color and so bright inside and giving some mood to the human.
Each area seems to tell a different story, looking at the map of the museum. Do you have a favourite area that you can take us to?
Yes, of course. My favorite area is Mini Azerbaijan because we can see the figurine, like little model of each building in Azerbaijan. They are carrying and they are preparing new one.
During this podcast, we're not going to be able to bring you all of the sights and sounds and smells of this centre. So what we suggest you do at Mark David Pod is our social media. Go there, have a look at some of the videos, the photographs that we have there, which will give you a flavour and maybe encourage you to also visit this centre yourself. We've only been wandering around this. I don't want to call it a museum, it's a centre. It's a cultural centre, it's a heritage centre. It is whatever you want it to be.
Well, it's not whatever you want it to be, because if it was a football stadium, I'd be very, very at home and no one's kicking footballs in here. But yes, it is more than a cultural centre, more than a museum. It is a combination of everything.
Talk a little bit about the first thing that we saw and both of us jaw dropped when we came in through the entrance after we passed through security.
There were bits of silk flying in the air in 3 different colours representing the flag of Azerbaijan. It really was hypnotic.
It was absolutely beautiful. Everybody is drawn to it. Do you know what those 3 colours represent? Do you remember?
I do. They are the 3 colours of the flag of Azerbaijan. The red represents independence, the green represents Islam, and the blue represents being part of the Turkic nations.
As in turquoise.
Now it's my turn to get all excited, and both of us are excited about this bit. Around us, we have traditional costumes, which you will see in many places. We also have, well, do you know what? Before we actually say what we have, shall we just experiment? I'm going to move onto a red circular carpet. It's probably about 2 feet by 2 feet, and let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to step off the carpet. Mark it. I just called you Mark it. Mark, shall we move about a yard backwards and you'll step onto your red carpet? Okay, so we've got the principle. We step on a carpet and music appears. But in each case, there is a musical instrument by the side.
I'm used to stepping on red carpets and bands playing.
Oh, very good. Do you want to explain or shall I?
You can explain, Dave.
Oh, I'm
because I want to step on another thing.
Behind us, there is a video of a band playing traditional Azerbaijani instruments, and those same instruments that you can see on the video are actually laid out in front of us, or at least some of them. So this instrument is called a gaval, which looks a bit like a tambourine.
And I stood under a kamancha.
You kind of balance it on your knee. It's a stringed instrument, but it also... it's very difficult. It's like it's got a salad bowl underneath it.
Can I play with another one?
Yes, you can. What are you playing on?
Playing on this one is easy to pronounce. It's called a tar. For a git like me, it's a guitar. But
okay, go for it. And what's really funny is there are lots of other people doing the same thing as us. People are doing selfies. At the moment, it's all adults. And when the kids aren't looking, the adults behave just like the children. What's beautiful about this centre, as our guide Suleyman was telling us before, is that you can take from it what you want. And if there's an area, an exhibition that you're not interested in, you can move on to the next thing because there are so many.
David, put that instrument down. When he said you can take from it what you want, it didn't mean help yourself.
Okay, I'm going to do one more, and then I think it'll be time to move on to some other part of this centre.
My saz is not working. Oh, there goes my saz.
Yes. You think you should see a doctor about your sagging saz. You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com. Regular listeners to this podcast will know that Mark is a hypochondriac. He's had claims of hepatitis, he's called off trips because he's had colds and all sorts of ridiculous things, and now he's got a boo-boo on his little finger.
I'm bleeding.
And guess what? We walk into this gorgeous model village. It's got all of Azerbaijan in miniature, and Mark bled all over it.
Well, it had lots of cars. Outside every little mini building, there's cars. And I thought, I'll pretend I'm driving on the road. What I didn't know is the road was actually quite sharp.
That explains a lot of the driving in this city, actually, and in the country that we've been around. We've spent a good time in this centre. We've seen puppets, we've seen costumes, you've heard the music, phenomenal displays. What's caught your eye the most?
The blood pouring from my hand.
Please note, from the hypochondriac, we've gone from a drop to pouring. By the end of this 2-minute clip, we'll have the entire emergency rescue team of Azerbaijan in this Hadar Aliyev Centre trying to rescue Mark.
I am my own section on Azerbaijani drama.
Anyway, answering my question...
I like this. This is a version of Mini Israel.
No, this is Mini Azerbaijan.
It's the Azerbaijani version called Mini Azerbaijan.
It does have a Bet Knesset, a synagogue in it.
It does. It has a synagogue, it has mosques, it has hotels, it has memorials, towers, everything, and sharp roads.
Why don't we go see what else this city has to offer and pick up a couple of aspirin in a pharmacy for you?
I want to go and play with the cars now.
Mark, you've been dying to talk about lunch.
Da-da, 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 da-da-da-da.
You just go around the world insulting other people's cultures. You really are pathetic.
Gee, that's a bit harsh.
Jaws.
Yeah, it was a shark.
Do you know
Wasn't that the name of the restaurant?
Do you know any Arabic, or in this case Azerbaijani?
No. Nah.
Okay. So, shark is the east.
Okay.
And we went to an eastern restaurant.
But it still sounds like shark, so I did the Jaws.
But it's a.
Are we not being funny anymore?
It's a K. It's a very hard K from the back of your throat.
Yeah.
Shark. Anyway,
Jaws.
Anyway, the reason that Mark was making silly noises is because he actually wanted to praise the local cultures and the local warm welcome that we've received.
The restaurant was lovely, the food was lovely, and as we sat down, our waiter brought us 2 little flags for our table, an Azerbaijani flag and an Israeli flag.
The first thing I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, everybody's going to know that we're from Israel. Oh no, they're all going to look. And then there was another family that came from the United Arab Emirates, and they brought out an Azerbaijani flag and a flag from the UAE, and it's just a really, really nice custom.
So you know where people are from if you don't like them. You can start an argument about global politics on any table in the restaurant. But the food was gorgeous.
Or you could set the shark on them.
I had salmon, actually.
Which looked
it had
amazing.
Shark teeth marks
it looked amazing. Suleyman, the poor guy, I mean, he's now spent 2-3 days with us. He must be cursing when Azerbaijan.travel, looked them up online, turned around to him and said, we've got these 2 reporters coming in from Israel. Could you look after them for 3 days? And the poor guy has had to listen to our humour for several days. He also speaks Hebrew, so we can't whisper anything about him in a third language because he understands everything we say. And he speaks about another 6 languages.
And he also does irony very well. When I forgot he spoke Hebrew and I said, oh, in Hebrew we say Abba and Ima. And he looked at me, this man with a master's in Oriental Studies who speaks fluent Hebrew, and just smiled and went, oh, really?
Let me take you away from the world of our sarcasm and irony and whatever, and let's talk carpets.
So Azerbaijan is very famous with its carpets. Several carpets now they protecting in some museums in London and France. In Azerbaijan, carpets families are dividing. We have several carpet family, Shirvan group and Ganja group, and also Tabriz group and Nakhchivan and Kazakh.
So these are all from different regions of Azerbaijan, and also you mentioned Tabriz, which is in Iran, but is in the area where there's a large Azerbaijani population.
In Azerbaijan, in USSR time, we had the carpet museum, but inside of the Juma Mosque in Old City. So after that, they moved this carpet museum to the museum center, another building. But in 2014, established and opened our new gorgeous carpet museum.
Do you want to describe what it looks like, Mark?
I can. I'll do it in 1 word or 2 words. A carpet.
The building from outside is shaped like a rolled up carpet that is beginning to unfurl. And guess what you can see inside the museum?
I think there are some rugs.
There are lots and lots and lots of carpets. According to Mark, the earliest one dating back to the 17th century. The largest one is pretty big. Most of you listening to this are not going to be fitting it into your living room.
The carpet in Azerbaijan is a UNESCO intangible heritage site. And I think the tribute the building pays to it, the immense size of this building and the design really highlights how important it is in Azerbaijan. And if that wasn't enough, there is like a fake canal there with gondolas going around on electronic boats.
Oh, that's really nice. 2 other really important things are in this neighbourhood. 1, our hotel is right around the corner. And number 2, and Mark is really excited, right now we are looking at the lowest station of the funicular.
A what?
A funicular.
I love a funicular.
Funiculi. It's going to take us up to Highland Park and those tremendous flames. We're drawing to a close our visit to the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku. But before we say goodbye, we want to tell you a few more things that we've done over the last few hours since we left the Carpet Museum.
We got on the funicular which obviously was the highlight of the whole trip. The funicular brought us up to Highland Park, which, as you can hear from its name, is on high land and gives you magnificent views all over the Caspian Sea.
And was a very large park, but other things have happened in this part of the world that have significantly influenced the way that this incredible vantage point actually looks. So below us we can see the entire skyline of this beautiful city and out into the Caspian Sea. Behind us there is a television tower, the television headquarters of AZTV, and the Parliament building, the National Assembly. Also on this plateau we see those buildings that we've been talking about, the three flames. They are truly magnificent, but this is also a place of memorial.
It contains the burial grounds and the memorial grounds to those people involved in the Karabakh Wars. They're on different levels depending on which countries they're from and which wars they're from. And at the top of the hill there is a large flame memorial. And the flame obviously is integral in Azerbaijan and in Baku because of the oil here. It goes hand in hand with the symbols of Baku, the crest of Baku being those three flames.
We're going to be back in a few weeks' time with more of this beautiful country, but for now we're going to say some thank yous. Mark, let's say thank you to the good folks who brought us over to Azerbaijan.
So thank you, starting with the CEO of Azerbaijan Tourism, Florian Sengschmidt, for the head of the Azerbaijan Tourism Office in Israel, the lovely Jamila, to Leila, Lala, Javanshir, Gunay, Gunel, and all the other people from Azerbaijan Tourism that have helped make this trip happen.
Azerbaijan.travel is the website to check all things Azerbaijani.
And on social media, they are Experience Azerbaijan.
Do we need to say thank you to the man behind us? He's not really listening, is he?
I think so, because he's also our lift home, so we have to be very nice to him.
Suleyman has been a great tour guide, fixer, organiser extraordinaire, and has kept us company with laughs in English, in Azerbaijani and in Hebrew over the last few days.
And thank you to Azerbaijan Airlines for bringing us here.
We have to say a special thank you, in addition to all of the people who brought us here, to an organisation that does tremendous work throughout the world.
We would like to say thank you to Chabad, and particularly Rabbi Shneor and the Chabad community in Baku, the actual Ashkenazi community of Baku, of which Rabbi Shneor is the rabbi. He looked after us on Shabbat and hosted not only us but other people who have come to Baku for Shabbat. They organise Shabbat meals, they organise all sorts of things for the community.
And it's very important, I guess, at this point to point out, in case you're wondering, our interview with Rabbi Shneor was conducted before Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
If you've got any complaints, if you've hated this podcast, if you hate Mark and I and think we should be taken off the podcast waves, then please email us, markdavidpod@gmail.com, and you can also reach out to us via our social. The handle is @markdavidpod.
Is it quiz time?
I think it is. As usual, it's you with the quiz question.
What do Chicago and Baku have in common?
Water.
Partly, yes, but what comes with water?
Salt.
And fire, and one other thing. Correct, flatulence.
Wind.
Wind. Obviously, Chicago is the windy city, and Baku is nicknamed the City of Winds.
And on that note, we shall say farewell from this gorgeous city, this beautiful view, and a wonderfully friendly people who have stretched out their hand in friendship to us, knowing full well that we're from Israel.
Goodbye.
Farewell.